Well, I made a skill build. This is the first skill build I've ever done, and it's the first time I've used any of these weapons, so I took it upon myself to do some invasions to try and learn how to use them at all. And initially, it was a lot of L2 spamming and visceral attacking because that's what works. That is very much what kills people. Basically, whatever amount of health the host is at, I'm going to one-shot them unless they have like a Vic Gouge setup. So I'm very much incentivized to spam L2 whenever I possibly can. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it isn't the best strategy. It definitely has a lot of easy counters, and it's not as if my bullet damage is any good, so the parry is really the only thing I get out of it. But I mean, at 50 skill, there's really no reason that you can't just finish people off, because all I have to do here is chase this guy down and gun spam him, and he's done. It's not the nicest way to play, but it works. And now this invasion is actually an invasion that I did during one of Ghost Hardware streams. And I'm still practicing the cane here, which I mean isn't the best weapon to be using. But I really like its moveset. I feel like it looks very stylish. It has a lot of range, it has a lot of reach. It's a very nice, it's a nice skill weapon, but it's not like a necessary one. And this guy fortunately leaves me alone. I don't know how to deal with the cause parasite as an idea. I have to figure it out still. It has quite a lot of active frames. So here I'm thinking I'll just try to get an opening on this guy and then I'll chase him down with my fellow executioner here. But I decide instead to just occupy Ghost Hardware at one point. And then he's using the slower cane. Which really is not that difficult to counter, because it is just so easy to parry. But I'm not doing that here. I'm trying to wean myself off of the gun spam that I so desperately cling to. Also, using transform attacks is something I was focusing on a little bit, because I really only ever use R1. And I try to use R1 as best as possible, but I realize that the variety of move options in Bloodborne is so much greater than Dark Souls, and that you're almost certainly better off learning how to use the backstep attacks and the transform attacks, because that's what the game is about. The game is about being versatile and being able to switch between your two move sets. That fucking cause parasite. Here I'm just trying to heal safely. And then I get decked in the face. And fortunately, my executioner friend, died. So now I'm alone here. Kind of. Or it sort of devolves back into a 1v1v1. So then I think, okay, well, if I kill this guy, then I have Ghost to myself alone. And that's usually how I think when I do an invasion and there's a streamer. I'm like, well, if I take care of the red, then I get to do a duel. And I don't really do duels, so it's a good opportunity to take duels that are slightly less risky than, you know, Mensis duels or Nightmare Frontier duels. Which I really haven't bothered with much, because usually when you do those, you come in, someone has a cause parasite with the old hunter bone on, And then they basically teleport across your screen independent of the old hunter bone, and you have to deal with where you think they might be. Or you run into like a buffed Rakuyo setup. Or someone's trying to be a badass with the saw spear. But generally it's the lag that kills me. The connections I've had with streamers has been pretty good. So I've mainly stuck to that, outside of invasions and duels also, when I invade these streams. I really like the rope Molotovs. I feel like they give you a lot of options if you do catch someone with it, and if you don't want to follow up on it, then you're safe, and you get to go heal or take a better position, whatever you want to do. And then I think me and Ghost hit him at the same time, and we just finish him off. And now I've got 2 blood vials, so this really isn't going to go great, but... the Bloodborne jump. So I'm trying to get some advantage here, but there's really nothing that I can do. I'm just getting absolutely destroyed trying to heal. So I believe it's at this point where I'm just like, well, if I got a visceral, then I'll just one-shot him. And it was something that I was refraining from doing the entire fight. And it's what gets me killed at the end. Very fun, crazy free-for-all. Whenever I catch a host down here, I always have to flick my camera around to check the corners, because you never know if there's someone else that wants you dead down here. Here I am using exclusively R1. But the Kane R1 is nice. It still reaches pretty far, it does good damage. And although it might not stun to all hell, it definitely does its job. Coming up next, we have a saw user. I believe I lost this guy earlier, but it's kind of hard to contest a saw with any weapon that isn't another saw, really. And I've come to the conclusion that this is a person who is entirely content to simply dodge every attack on reaction. So you kind of have to be proactive with how you contest a saw. Otherwise, they're just going to gun spam at you and dash in an R1, and you're not going to be able to avoid it unless you're outside of its range. And me, knowing that he's just going to R1, just gun spams it. Every saw user is exactly the same. Well, that's not entirely true, but they all have similar habits because their best option is to use R1. Their best option is to dash at you and use R1. After a little while of using a skill build, I realized that I had enough arcane from putting Beast Roar on it that I could also use the old Hunter Bone if I really wanted to. And it's very nice, but it's also... it feels cheap. It feels as cheap as that gun parry. It doesn't feel so much like an earned victory as you just kind of get an infinite number of invincibility frames, and there's not a whole lot your opponent can do against it but wait the 16 seconds for it to wear off. And then I took a trip on down to Yargul, and at soul level 60 you get quite a few invasions, which is fabulous. I really wanted to try out the safe because I had never used it before, and I didn't dislike it. I thought it was good. I didn't love the untransformed mode, this sort of long, slow, arcing mode, but I did like the transformed mode, mostly because it flings you forward whenever you use it. But it does fantastic damage. Fantastic damage. Hitboxes last forever. Very hard to interrupt. Just all around. And then, of course, you get the hiders. And I had spawned in down below at Yargul, and I was looking around for this guy forever. Forever. Did not know where he was. There was nothing to indicate where he could possibly be. So I basically scanned the entire level for the course of 20 minutes because I was too bitter not to kill him from wasting my time after the initial 5 minutes. And then when I found him, it was the most disappointing thing ever. Honestly and truly, just pitiful. I had also been putting off using various buffs on weapons because I didn't think it was entirely necessary. But at soul level 60, I wanted to try it out, and it was pretty strong. It was exactly as strong as I was anticipating it would be. And then some. Let it be known that the amount of time I have spent farming for gems for this, not only this build, but also my other Blood Tinge build, the Bayonetta one, is frankly absurd. This pick, I believe, that I'm using now is a full 32.6 thrust pick, because I just had to have it. I couldn't not have a perfect thrust pick in my inventory. But at 50 skill and only 10 strength, it's not quite as hard-hitting as other weapons would be. This guy got me so mad. He's throwing Numbing Mist at me as if he's going to hit it. As if he's actually going to hit me with a Numbing Mist in Bloodborne. And he's got his Phantom here with him, trying to gank me on this bridge of all places. Like, truly comical. So the Phantom, like, gets absolutely shredded by me. And he's done. Like, he's just done. I killed him instantly. And now this guy's gonna run. And he runs all the way up. He doesn't even take the shortcut. He runs through the level, and everything misses him. Everything. I try shooting him, and then he sits on the button for a while. And at this point, like, I'm holding the host world hostage, as Saint puts it, because there's no way. There's just no way. So I'm thinking he'll come back down, because these people usually do. I'm thinking he'll want to resummon, and in order to resummon, he'll have to get off the button of the elevator. So I give it a few minutes, and then once he does that, then I go up. And I know that he's just going to fog wall me, but I'm going to force him to fog wall me. I'm going to make him go to the boss. Because now he can't do this again. Now this fog wall is here for him as well. And if he wants to do that, then he's going to have to outrun another invader. The rest of these clips are either invasions or Vile Blood invasions I did on Pincognito's stream. Mostly because I was bored, but I also wanted to try out the Blades of Mercy a little bit, as you can see here. And I wanted to take an opportunity to learn the Church pick a little better, because I'm not very good with the moveset yet. So here I'm trying to use transform attacks a lot more with the Blades of Mercy, and really get the dashing R1 spacing and baiting down. And I mean, against a wheel, it's not nearly as difficult as something like a saw. So this was a good testing opportunity. And I really do like the untransformed mode of this weapon, because I know that people do mostly use the transformed mode. Also, the transform attack backed into the untransformed mode is not nearly as good as the other way around. But it just lets you be so aggressive. It doesn't use very much stamina. It does fantastic damage. And it's not nearly that lacking on reach, really. You have to be right up in their face to use it, but that doesn't really matter. They're just so fast. And thank God this Visceral didn't kill me, because any build with enough skill absolutely would have one-shot me there. So I'm perfectly content to just R1 mash into people with them, if they're not going to gun spam. I did get parried, though, so I should have not done that, because I did realize that that person was willing to gun spam me. And now this is just a double Blade of Mercy gank against poor Pinko, with Draco Kimura and his poison Blades of Mercy, and my full physical ones. And it's just a miserable experience. We all laughed about it after, because it was just such a nightmare. Here I'm just practicing more spacing with the cane, trying to figure out what sort of ranges I have to use it at and when I can bait and when I can't. But I do really like the transform attack, where you just throw the whip straight down, because it is very long-reaching. The Holy Moonlight Sword hurts. It's extremely damaging, if you gem it right. And here I actually remember to use Beast Drawer, because I allotted enough Arcane on this build to use Beast Drawer at 120, and then I forget to use it 90% of the time. And it is almost always the reason that I die, is that I just choose not to use Beast Drawer because I forget it's even there. So this once again devolves into a gank, but like, I just kind of wanted to display what I'm working on in terms of moveset usage for the cane. And Pinko, being as good a player as he is able to survive us for an inordinate amount of time. Mostly because we're just kind of screwing around and we're just kind of having fun. But, you know, always a good opportunity to learn something new about the weapons you're using. Because, like, as I said, I had never done a skill build before, so this was all new to me. And there was a running gag this evening of everyone using a Call Beyond for whatever reason. So then I fall back to the church pick as a secondary option, because it is gemmed as perfectly as it is, and I do think of it as a better option than the cane. But the thing is, I don't really know how to use the church pick either. So it's not as if it's any better than the cane. You'll see the running attack does like 100 damage, because it isn't a thrust attack, so it doesn't have the damage bonus. But even just the R1, pretty good. And if they try to dash around you, you can catch them with the transform attack. And then you could just keep using the transform mode. But that's all I really wanted to show here. There's not really a whole lot more that happens. And so we arrive again. And here's a clip of me being a dick unintentionally. Which is funny, because I get beat up for it. I just can't stop using the gun. That's my biggest problem right now. It's so rewarding. That's the problem. And no other purples were showing up at this time, so I just started the fight. Here we'll have another example of me not using Beast Drawer. I didn't want to take that Visceral. That would have been silly. The transformed attack and the dash R1s with the cane are really good. You can interrupt people before they get out their attacks a lot of the time. I love that transform attack. And once again, going for the heal parry, if only to land an R1. Because this is on a stream, and I mean, you can only be so tryhard. If I wanted to win-win, I'd just bring out my perfectly gemmed Saw Spear. Or, like, something else. I've got a billion weapons. I could bring out a Rakuyo. Like, nonsense things. I could use the old Hunter Bone. I could remember to use Beast Drawer. Generally, if I wanted to get better in duels, I would actually go do them. And that's something I should probably make a habit of doing and then making highlights of in the future. But this, I thought, was a good introduction to just kind of training on the movesets of the weapons that I wanted to play with. Who knows how much longer Bloodborne PvP will be a viable pastime anyway. And then I completely forget Beast Drawer is a thing here, and I would have been able to Beast Drawer him multiple times because he's just in my face. But good games, Pinko. This other vile blood here is Saint Riot, who is invading with us. I don't exactly want to gank him yet, but the option's there. I figure that my presence just being near enough is enough pressure. But then Saint gets absolutely one shot by the Moonlight Sword. And fighting in this room here is strange. So I break out the Scythe, because I love the Scythe. But I only like the transformed mode of the Scythe. The reach on it is excellent for the damage, even if it isn't the most versatile thing in the world, or fast. I also have this habit of healing in people's faces, which makes them think I'm going to attack them, and then they back off anyway, which gives me enough frames to heal. I mean, just look at that reach. Look at how much space you can threaten, even if you don't outright hit them. So I feel like the Scythe wasn't working, so I just switched back to the pick, because it's a pick. I like to call it the lobotomy pick. And I spent the time to get those 32.6 gems. You bet your ass I'm going to use it. If I had 40 strength instead of 10, it would be a lot more threatening. But it's still plenty powerful with just the 50 skill. 1,000 damage on a fully charged R2. You can't get that anywhere. The results speak for themselves. GG's. These aren't like formal duels, they're practically free-for-alls. But I like to isolate them into little duel-esque sections. And there is a strategy to that. Because politically, you're trying not to kill the streamer first, because they're the ones hosting. They're nice enough to do it. So it would be foolish of you to just go after them and kill them in 2 hits. So I take it upon myself to duel the other red, or the streamer to keep them occupied from ganking the other purple, and I figure that's a good enough way to play it. I mean, I'm using the cane and the pick and the burial blade, so it's not like I'm running after people with a saw spear. I'm not using the safe, I'm not using the Rikuyo. I used the Blades of Mercy once, decided it was too much, and then backed off. So then poor Kelvin, who I tunnel vision on here, and just get so much damage off. So now that I've killed Kelvin, now I'm like, okay, it's okay if I go after the streamer. So I'm still sort of training with the cane here. And I try not to spam the gun, but I do occasionally end up peppering a couple shots in. And here especially it's quite bad. Here it's like terrible. This was a bad heal. I should have run away. And then I just get shredded by that beast cutter. And Pinko is really good with the beast cutter. He was talking about how much he liked it that evening, and I was like, yeah, I mean, he's good at it, so absolutely use it more. This was like the last invasion of the night, I think, so I was like, well, I'm going to whip out the Blades of Mercy and I'm going to play around with them again because I only really used them that once. And I'm still not great with them. The moveset is so varied that you really have to know the virtues of each individual move and when to use it. I mean, none of them like do anything special, like it doesn't have any armor or anything. It's just that some are faster than others, some do more damage, and some do more stun. God, everything about the Blade of Mercy is just so good. Except for the range, of course. You can put on the pressure so easily, and they're so fast that you can just do whatever you want. but they're not free. I mean, you have to get right next to someone to use it. Here I am trying to use more backstep attacks because I really like the backstep R1 on the scythe here. I also really like the backstep R2, which combos very nicely into the transform attack if they dash near you. But if they dash away, then they don't really get to do that much. Scythe is a weapon I have not used very much either. Very grateful for the opportunity to use it here, and to practice with it a little bit, and to show a couple of the things that I could do with it, like catching dashes. But that's about all. I still have a long way to go before I master the whole movesets of any of these weapons, and stop myself from gun spamming as horribly as I do. So thank you for watching, and GG's Pinko, thank you so much for hosting. It was so much fun to do those free-for-alls. Hope you all have a great day. Take care.